My name is Tamara, and I am 21 years old. Right when the uterine contractions hit the hardest, I was pushed straight out into the cold hallway of Circle City Medical. I stood there completely helpless and panicked. I wrapped my arms around my heavy pregnant belly as the delivery room door slammed shut right in my face without any mercy. The nurse glared at me through the narrow gap before the door clicked. "Get out now and don't come back until I call your name," she ordered with a sharp and threatening tone. I leaned against the hard wall while enduring the severe pain tearing through my body. The physical agony was overwhelming, but the absolute isolation of a young single mother fighting through labor alone was much worse. I waited in the dim hallway for exactly 5 minutes before forcing my heavy legs to take slow steps back toward the slightly ajar door. I just wanted to ask for a glass of water or some medical assistance. However, that feeling of loneliness was instantly replaced by a horrifying shock that completely froze my entire body. I stopped breathing when I recognized the hushed voices coming from inside that hospital room. The people secretly negotiating a dark financial deal with the nurse behind my back were the absolute closest family members I had in this world. Welcome to the Revenge Mode channel. If you enjoy gripping stories about family betrayal and ultimate justice, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our new original videos. The sharp abdominal cramps quickly gave way to a freezing numbness that spread down my spine as I pressed my ear against the door crack. The temporary administrative room of the maternity ward was dimly lit, but I could clearly see the transaction happening inside. I witnessed my father Larry reaching into his leather coat. He pulled out a thick, heavy stack of $100 bills. He tossed the cash onto the metal desk right in front of Marilyn. He did not hesitate or show any sign of guilt. He spoke in a low, commanding tone, treating the hospital ward like a corporate boardroom. "$50,000 in cash, just like we discussed," Larry said, tapping his finger on the envelope. "I need those medical files altered before the morning shift arrives." The cruel truth of their conversation hit me harder than the labor pains. They were openly discussing the child my sister Veronica had just given birth to in the VIP suite upstairs. Her newborn was currently in the neonatal intensive care unit. The doctor had diagnosed the infant with severe congenital respiratory distress syndrome. Larry explained that the medical condition was extremely serious and would require lifelong, expensive treatments. Their dark scheme was far more sophisticated than a simple physical baby swap. They were not planning to just switch cribs in the nursery. Instead, Larry and Marilyn were plotting a complete digital erasure. They agreed to manipulate the hospital database directly. Marilyn promised to secretly transfer my healthy son into Veronica's care records the moment I delivered. Simultaneously, she would completely delete my name and my admission data from the birth documents. Legally, it would look like I was never a patient here, and my son would become Veronica's legitimate child from the very first second. My mother Diane stood next to the desk with her arms crossed. She coldly justified the entire criminal act without a single shred of hesitation. She firmly stated that this manipulation was strictly to protect Veronica's flawless public image. "Veronica's husband will leave her the moment he sees that sick infant," Mom stated with absolute ice in her voice. "We cannot let her perfect marriage fall apart over this tragedy." Then they brought up my name. Hearing my parents talk about me made my stomach churn. To them, I was just a financially struggling 21-year-old single mother. Mom dismissively claimed that I had no real career, no husband, and absolutely no capability to provide a decent life for a child. In their twisted minds, ripping my baby away from me was not a crime. They considered it a perfectly reasonable sacrifice. They truly believed they were doing everyone a favor by giving my healthy son to a wealthy household, while discarding me entirely. In their eyes, I was not a daughter. I was merely a convenient incubator to solve their immediate crisis. The utter lack of guilt in their voices made me sick to my stomach. I realized right then that I had no family left. It was just me and my unborn child against the world. The betrayal shattered my heart, but survival instincts quickly took over. I bit down on my lower lip so hard that I could taste the metallic tang of warm blood. I had to endure the physical pain of labor and the emotional torture of their words in complete silence. I forced myself to stop shaking. I slowly slipped my hand into my jacket pocket, trying not to make the fabric rustle. I pulled out my smartphone and unlocked the screen. With trembling fingers, I opened the voice recording application. I pressed the red button, holding the device close to the door gap to capture every single detail of their criminal agreement. At 11:30 at night, the hallway space was suffocatingly quiet, leaving only the steady rhythmic beeps of medical equipment echoing off the white walls. I quietly backed away from the maternity ward's administrative room and moved down the hall toward the night duty desk. I needed to find someone with system access who was not involved with my parents. Behind the glowing computer monitor, I encountered the social worker Jerry. He was currently reviewing the medical records of emergency patients for his night shift. I approached him, clutching my stomach as another severe contraction hit, and begged him to check my admission status. I gave him my full name and explained that I was pushed out of the delivery room without any logical explanation. Jerry looked highly concerned and immediately logged into the hospital's internal database using his credentials. His fingers typed rapidly across the keyboard. A deep frown appeared on his face as he stared at the screen. He turned the monitor slightly so I could see the interface. He discovered that my official admission record had been completely altered by Marilyn just a few minutes prior to our conversation. My file was no longer listed under active labor patients. Instead, it was moved to a hold for review status. Furthermore, Marilyn had attached a strict internal legal warning to my profile, effectively locking my medical data from being accessed or updated by regular staff. This maneuver meant no other doctor or nurse could officially treat me without triggering an immediate alert to the maternity ward supervisor. Jerry took off his glasses and rubbed his temples, recognizing the extreme severity of this unauthorized intervention. He explicitly stated that altering a patient's active medical file to block care was a severe violation of the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, commonly known as HIPAA. He quickly guided me through my fundamental patient rights under the state laws. Since my parents had not yet obtained any legal guardianship over me or my unborn child, I still retained full autonomy over my medical decisions. He firmly proposed a highly unconventional but absolutely necessary solution. He suggested an emergency out-of-network discharge to get me out of Circle City Medical before the system update finalized at midnight. Without wasting a single second, he accessed a different administrative portal designed for emergency discharges and quickly printed a physical copy of a voluntary discharge form. He handed me a blue pen and pointed to the signature line at the bottom of the paper. He instructed me to sign the document immediately. Signing this specific form guaranteed that my departure from the facility was entirely legal and officially documented in the central database. It was a crucial step to ensure I left against medical advice on my own terms, effectively preventing my family from contacting the authorities to claim I was mentally unstable or that I had recklessly absconded while under official hospital care. They needed to control my records to steal my baby, but a signed voluntary discharge would instantly invalidate their ongoing database manipulation. Your file is locked under a legal warning. We have to process a voluntary discharge right now, Jerry urged, pushing the paper closer to my trembling hands. Please help me, they want to erase my name from his birth certificate. I pleaded quickly, signing my full name on the dotted line. The professional and strictly legal assistance from Jerry became my ultimate lifeline in that desperate moment. His quick thinking helped me retain the legal guardianship of my unborn son, right at the most fragile boundary between losing everything and escaping. He stamped the paper with the official hospital seal, tearing off the yellow carbon copy for me to keep securely in my pocket as definitive proof of my legal departure. He grabbed his security badge from the desk, preparing to secretly navigate me through the complex hospital corridors to find a safe exit. At 1 in the morning, the hallway lights switched to a dim hibernation mode as I hastily threw on an outer jacket to prepare to leave. Time was running out rapidly. I pulled my smartphone from my pocket and immediately dialed my best friend, Morgan. I spoke in a hushed, urgent whisper, giving her my exact coordinates. I instructed her to bypass the visitor parking area completely and park her vehicle right next to the ambulance exit bay at the rear of the building. I explicitly told her to keep the engine running and wait for my signal. I also asked her to keep her headlights off to avoid drawing any unwanted attention from the security guards patrolling the perimeter. To conceal my appearance, I pulled a thick, oversized baggy hoodie out of my overnight bag and wore it directly over my thin hospital gown. I carefully pulled the large hood down low over my forehead, ensuring my face was completely hidden in the shadows. The extra layers also helped disguise the prominent shape of my pregnant belly, making me look like a regular, exhausted visitor heading home after a long shift. I took one last look at the hallway before turning my back on it. Jerry walked a few paces ahead of me to lead the way out of the ward. He skillfully navigated us through the complex labyrinth of the facility. We took the narrow service corridors and utilized every architectural blind spot available. His extensive knowledge of the building's layout allowed us to entirely avoid the brightly lit main reception desk. We carefully bypassed the direct sweeping range of the large security cameras installed across the front lobby. My heart pounded against my ribs with every step, fearing that Marilyn or my mother might suddenly turn the corner. We moved in absolute silence, communicating only through quick hand gestures. We finally reached the heavy metal doors of the emergency exit. Jerry pushed the crash bar and the cold night wind hit my face. Morgan's dark sedan was idling quietly exactly where I had requested. I quickly opened the rear door and scrambled inside. "Just sit tight in the back, I will get you out of this county right now," Morgan said, glancing at me with deep concern through the rearview mirror. "Don't drive past the main gate, my father might be parked there," I replied, breathing heavily as I settled onto the seat. Right as I positioned myself on the back seat of Morgan's car, a severe uterine contraction struck me with unprecedented ferocity. The sudden pain radiated intensely through my lower abdomen, forcing a sharp gasp out of my lungs. My hands instinctively gripped the edge of the leather seat. The overwhelming intensity of this particular spasm was a clear biological warning that my body was entering the final stage of labor. The time until birth was no longer measured in hours, but merely in minutes. I leaned against the cold window pane, biting down on the sleeve of my hoodie to muffle my groans. Morgan shifted the gear instantly and stepped firmly on the gas pedal. The vehicle quickly slipped out of the loading dock area, maneuvering smoothly through the back alleys of the hospital grounds. We left the sterile structure of Circle City Medical far behind us. Within moments, the car merged seamlessly into the sparse traffic of the dark, desolate highway. Watching the city lights blur through the tinted windows, a profound sense of clarity washed over my mind. This speeding vehicle officially carried me away, breaking me free from the cruel, suffocating control of the people who falsely claimed the title of my blood relatives. At 3 in the morning, the tires screeched intensely against the asphalt as Morgan slammed on the brakes right in front of the emergency room doors of a neighboring county hospital. Morgan threw her car door open and rushed inside to alert the staff. Within seconds, the night shift medical team ran out with a gurney, immediately taking charge of my critical labor situation. They swiftly lifted me onto the stretcher, rolling me straight into an emergency trauma and delivery room. The nurses prioritized my physical condition over everything else, pushing all standard administrative paperwork, identification forms, and insurance verification to the side to be completed at a later time. "Patient is in the final stages of labor emergency. Admit ID and insurance will be updated later," the lead charge nurse shouted down the brightly lit corridor, clearing the path ahead of my moving stretcher. The entire birthing process unfolded in agonizing physical pain, yet the environment was incredibly professional and focused solely on maternal care. The room was filled with the sterile smell of antiseptic and the encouraging steady voices of strangers performing their medical duties. For the first time all night, I felt genuinely safe. I was completely surrounded by capable healthcare workers, completely free from the deceitful gazes, the toxic manipulation, and the calculated financial schemes of the people who shared my DNA. I pushed through the exhausting, relentless contractions with a fierce and renewed sense of purpose. I channeled every ounce of my remaining energy into the delivery, knowing my child was finally far out of their greedy reach. After what felt like an eternity of pushing and blinding physical exertion, a strong, vibrant cry suddenly tore through the tense atmosphere of the delivery room. That incredibly beautiful sound marked the exact moment my son was officially brought into the world. The attending physician quickly cleared his airways, cleaned him off, and placed his warm, fragile body directly onto my chest. He was completely healthy, breathing perfectly on his own, without any medical assistance, and entirely safe within the fiercely protective arms of his mother. Tears of pure relief and overwhelming joy streamed down my exhausted face as I felt his tiny, steady heartbeat thumping against my own skin. The terrifying ordeal of the previous hours was over, officially replaced by the undeniable reality of my newborn child. Shortly after the successful delivery, the medical staff carefully transferred us to a quiet, private recovery room on the maternity floor. I refused to let my extreme physical fatigue compromise our ongoing security. Before the administration clerk could even hand me the standard registration clipboard to finalize the delayed paperwork, I firmly demanded an immediate lockdown of our location data. I want to apply for absolute privacy protection. No one is allowed to look up my name, I stated firmly to the admitting clerk, ensuring she fully understood the absolute gravity of my specific request. The clerk nodded solemnly, immediately activating the strict confidential patient directory protocol on her digital tablet. This official administrative action guaranteed that any external inquiries regarding my presence at this medical facility would be met with a standardized denial. It effectively erased our existence from the public hospital registry under strict state health privacy laws. I wrapped the soft cotton blanket tighter around my little boy, holding his tiny, delicate frame incredibly close to my heart. Looking down at his peaceful, sleeping face, I silently made an ironclad vow to myself. I would relentlessly utilize every single available legal tool, hire the most aggressive family law attorneys, and fight tooth and nail through any court system required. I swore to completely destroy any person, institution, or toxic family force that ever dared to try and take my son away from me. At 8 in the morning, my phone screen lit up brightly with dozens of missed calls and threatening messages continuously pouring in. I picked up the device from the bedside table and scrolled through the endless wall of text. Dad had bombarded my inbox with vicious threats. He aggressively threatened to contact the local police department and Child Protective Services immediately. He declared his intention to file a formal report claiming that I had fled the medical facility in a highly unstable mental state. He wanted to build a false narrative painting me as an immediate danger to my own child in order to secure an emergency court order. His ultimate goal was to manipulate the local legal system to strip away my custody rights over my newborn son right away and forcefully return the infant to the hospital. Morgan sat beside my recovery bed and calmly helped me neutralize every single digital risk. She did not waste time offering emotional comfort. Instead, she focused entirely on practical security measures. She took the phone from my hands and swiftly locked down all of my social media accounts to prevent any unwanted tracking. Then she used a paperclip to pop the tray open, removed the old SIM card from my device, and snapped the plastic chip in half. Finally, she meticulously went through the system settings and completely turned off the location service's Bluetooth and Wi-Fi on all my electronic devices. A few moments later, Morgan reached into her bag and handed me a cheap prepaid burner phone she had purchased on the way here. The device rang almost instantly. Jerry contacted me again through an encrypted internal hospital line to ensure the conversation could not be traced back to his workstation. He strictly handled the legal logistics of the situation. He informed me that he had found the perfect legal representation for my case. He then directly connected the call to my lawyer, Mr. Sterling, a seasoned legal expert specializing in family protection and complex custody battles. Mr. Sterling took over the call with a commanding and highly professional tone. He proactively analyzed my current legal situation, noting that the voluntary discharge document gave us a massive tactical advantage against any kidnapping accusations. He mapped out a clear, aggressive counterattack plan to expose their extortion scheme. He explicitly required me to set up a direct, face-to-face meeting with my family members to gather undeniable physical evidence. He insisted this confrontation must happen in a highly populated public area to ensure maximum physical safety and to prevent them from attempting to take the baby by force. If you do not bring the baby back to the hospital right now, I will call CPS and report that you are mentally unstable. I read Dad's final text aloud to the attorney. We will meet them in a public place. County undercover police have already been prepared by me. Mr. Sterling responded firmly over the speakerphone. Following his precise legal instructions, I utilized the new burner phone number to execute our trap. I typed out a single, carefully crafted bait message addressed directly to Larry. In the text, I completely masked my newfound confidence and legal backing. I pretended to be physically exhausted, entirely out of options, and financially desperate. I stated that I had nowhere else to go with a newborn. I feigned total surrender, claiming I was now willing to accept their financial negotiations regarding the baby in exchange for a payout. I hit send, placed the device face down on the bedside table, and took a deep breath. This calculated move was designed specifically to lure them out of their secure, privileged environment and step right into our trap. At 2 p.m. on Friday, I sat alone in a secluded corner of a small coffee shop, trying to keep my breathing perfectly steady. The ambient noise of jazz music and espresso machines provided a chaotic background to my racing heartbeat. I kept my hands folded tightly on my lap under the table, making sure the small recording device remained perfectly positioned and actively capturing audio. Within a few minutes, the front entrance door swung open. Larry, Diane, and Veronica walked into the establishment with looks of absolute arrogance clearly displayed on their faces. They navigated through the crowded room and approached my table. They glanced down at me with pure condescension before pulling out their heavy wooden chairs. They sat down directly across from me without even bothering to flag down a waiter or order a drink. They treated the public space like their own private interrogation room. Before Larry could even initiate his formal negotiation, Veronica suddenly broke down into loud, hysterical sobs. She completely shed her usual proud, untouchable facade to complain bitterly about her current reality. She frantically wiped her tears with a tissue and wailed that she absolutely could not endure the harsh, unforgiving judgment from her wealthy in-laws. She selfishly declared that she simply did not have the emotional stability or physical strength to care for a chronically ill child for the rest of her life. I cannot raise a sick baby. My husband will divorce me. You have to understand my situation. Veronica cried out, leaning across the table as if expecting my unconditional sympathy. I stared at her in complete silence. I felt absolutely zero pity for the woman who actively participated in a scheme to steal my newborn son, just to save her own failing marriage. Larry quickly lost his patience with her dramatic emotional outburst. He maintained a completely cold and calculating demeanor, treating the situation like a corporate merger. He reached inside his tailored suit jacket and pulled out a thick white envelope. He pressed his hand flat against the paper and slowly pushed the envelope containing a massive cashier's check across the wooden table toward me. He clearly viewed this financial transaction as the ultimate price to permanently buy out my maternal rights and silence me forever. Do you actually think you can win? My money has already cleared the system completely. Just sign the papers to give up your custody rights? Larry demanded, his voice dripping with absolute certainty and unchecked power. They blatantly admitted their crimes right then and there. They openly discussed their exact process of using their vast financial power to manipulate the hospital's medical records and bribe the nursing staff. They were supremely confident that a penniless single mother like me would never have the necessary financial resources or legal connections to file a lawsuit against their prominent household. My mother Diane sat there silently nodding along with every word Larry spoke. She fully supported the twisted idea that my child was merely a convenient commodity to be bought and transferred to her favorite daughter. They laid out all their illegal actions with zero remorse, assuming I was too desperate, isolated, and broken to fight back against their wealth. I did not flinch. I absorbed every single arrogant confession they threw at me, knowing the hidden microphone caught every syllable. I looked directly into the eyes of my parents, seeing nothing but greedy, manipulative strangers staring back. I reached out and decisively pushed the thick envelope right back across the table, rejecting their sick offer without uttering a single word. I picked up the glass of ice water I had been holding. I took a slow sip, swallowed, and then calmly placed the glass back down onto the wooden surface. The heavy bottom of the cup struck the table, creating a sharp, dry clink. At 2:30 in the afternoon, the sudden sound of heavy chairs forcefully scraping against the wooden floor abruptly broke the tension as two plainclothes officers stepped forward from the adjacent table. They had been sitting there the entire time, quietly blending in with the regular coffee shop customers, while listening to every word through the hidden audio transmitter. The officers immediately flashed their official police badges and firmly announced the temporary detainment of Larry and Diane. They explicitly stated that the wealthy couple was being taken into custody for rigorous questioning, based directly on the live extortion recording and the blatant verbal confessions that had just been successfully collected at the scene. My parents tried to protest, claiming it was a massive misunderstanding, but the evidence was irrefutable. Larry and Diane, you are both being detained for questioning regarding allegations of medical record fraud and the coercion to surrender custodial rights, the lead officer declared, firmly placing his hand on Larry's tailored shoulder to prevent him from standing up. The arrogant, untouchable facade of my so-called family completely shattered into pieces right then and there. Their shock deepened significantly when my lawyer, Mr. Sterling, stepped out from the background to deliver the final crushing legal blow. He formally informed them that their hired accomplice, Marilyn, had already been officially suspended from her nursing duties at Circle City Medical earlier that morning. She was currently sitting in a county holding cell as federal authorities launched a full-scale criminal investigation into the severe falsification of hospital documents and HIPAA violations. Larry's face turned bright red with fury and disbelief, realizing his financial power was utterly useless against a federal mandate, but the officers quickly restrained him before he could make a single aggressive move toward me. Veronica stood completely frozen in her tracks, her face turning pale with absolute humiliation and sheer panic as the other coffee shop patrons stared at the unfolding scene. She finally realized that the perfectly crafted wealthy family image she had desperately tried to maintain through pure cruelty had officially crumbled into dust before the law. The money they thought could effortlessly buy my silence and secure a healthy child for her failing marriage had instead bought them federal criminal charges. She covered her face and sobbed, but this time nobody offered her any sympathy. I did not say a single word of goodbye or offer any pity to them as they were publicly escorted out of the building in handcuffs. Fast forward a few weeks later, the legal proceedings concluded entirely in my favor without any messy trial delays. The local family court officially issued a strict permanent restraining order against my relatives. The presiding judge legally stripped away all of their communication privileges and physical access rights, building an impenetrable legal wall to protect my current life and my son's future. They were permanently banned from coming anywhere near my residence, my workplace, or my child's daycare center. I held my healthy baby boy securely in my arms and took a wide, confident stride out of the heavy courthouse doors into the bright, warm afternoon sunlight. I looked down at his sleeping face, knowing I had successfully protected him from a lifetime of lies. I took a deep, refreshing breath of the crisp air, fully embracing a brand new, liberated life, completely free from any toxic blood ties. Finally ready to build a real family on my own terms. The harrowing journey of escaping my own flesh and blood has finally closed, leaving behind a profound realization. First, not everyone who bears the title of family will actually protect you. Sometimes the biological bond is merely a tool used for manipulation and abuse. Bravely severing ties with toxic relatives is never an act of selfishness, but rather the most justified boundary of self-defense. Second, never underestimate the sheer survival instinct of a mother. When pushed into a corner, she possesses the power to overthrow an entire corrupt system to protect her child. Finally, the truth and the law always find a way to speak up. Dark conspiracies covered up by wealth and arrogance will inevitably shatter when confronted with undeniable evidence. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this intense story of legal survival. What do you think about taking such drastic measures to cut off your own toxic family members? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and do not forget to hit that subscribe button to join us for more gripping real-life stories in the future.